Row,
Yes.
so it's in line with our guest as well joining via Zoom. It's Abindra Pradika Sumali, an expert on net zero economy. So, hello.
Hi, yes, yeah, thank you for having me, Audrey, and thank you, yeah, and pleasure to be here.
Yes, hello, Jindra. It's great to have you on TVR World. First of all, you are an expert on net zero economy. Can you please explain to us and to the audience as well, what is actually net zero economy?
So I think basically a net zero economy is where the economy itself is kind of what you produce or like carbon you emit to the atmosphere is kind of in balance in what the planetary carbon sinkings can kind of also remove from the atmosphere. And I think that is achieved by decoupling the economic growth from carbon emissions, and also kind of keeping the carbon sinks intact, as Mas Reza already said, kind of conserving forests, mangroves, and kind of the ocean because they're kind of the natural carbon sinks. So yeah, that's kind of basically the underlying kind of understanding of the net zero economy itself.
Mm. And in your opinion, as an expert on net zero economy, how can Indonesia do better to pursue its clean energy as well as having its environmental target? What are some of the do's and don'ts that you think we should pursue?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, I think first of all, I think kind of awareness from the people itself. That's number one. You need to kind of increase the awareness of people on kind of using clean energy, becoming more efficient. That's where kind of the decoupling part is important because it's always kind of economic growth, economic growth, economic growth. But then you need to kind of also be able to kind of create a system where it's not linked to the emissions. So the decoupling point is kind of super important, and you do that by investing in decarbonization technologies, low carbon solutions, and also kind of pursue funding and financing for these kind of solutions. And the don'ts is, I mean, you don't support the fossil fuel consumption. Don't kind of increase your consumption as well. In terms of like, let's say your daily habits like transport, energy, you need to be as efficient as possible. So those are kind of the basic do's and don'ts from my point of view.
Yeah, and how about in Indonesia itself? Like, what kind of action that we need to take? But before you answer, it is also a question that I would like to address to Reza.
Yes.
The same question. How about because it's a similar thing about conserving,
Yes.
right? To get a greener
Yeah.
environment, agriculture, and to preserve the conservation. What's in your vision on that?
Well, basically, Indonesia already have a lot of programs and strategy on how to do it. But the challenges right now is how to implement it. And I think the first thing is through education. So it's very difficult if we want to act on something, but we don't know how to act. So I think it's very important to socialize either net zero or nature preservation, because at the end of the day, when we do all these things, we also gaining advantages because our nature is preserved. You know, we will be happy, of course, if our nature is preserved, but we can also gain economy, as our speaker said about it.
Yeah, okay. So, Abindra, how about you?
I think in terms of that, I mean, Indonesia must to kind of be more kind of aggressive in terms of like setting the regulations and kind of also kind of setting a more ambitious target. I think Indonesia has kind of set up their kind of nationally determined contribution towards kind of reaching the Paris Agreement, and I think they're kind of in the process of kind of improving that as well and kind of making a more detailed plan on how to reach that. And I think it's up to kind of also kind of business practitioners, us as well, to kind of push for more ambitious targets, as well as kind of do our part in making sure that we consume less and kind of push for like that particular efficient net zero economy.
Okay.
Yeah, for this moment, Rindra, what do you think is the most feasible as well as achievable alternative energy sources for Indonesia that can substitute oil and coal?
Yeah, I think this is unique because I think like globally the move is kind of to electrify all things, because I think electrification is kind of one of the most efficient energy use. Electrifying heat use and kind of both in industrial and also in households, electrifying transport, as well as kind of moving from like more efficient ways of doing things, basically kind of investing in public transport, and to kind of because the answer is going to be electrification, we need to decarbonize the grid. And I think one of the most important ways of doing that is kind of investing in kind of solar and wind, as well as kind of hydropower and also geothermal. So yeah, I think those four things are going to be kind of the key energy sources for the future for Indonesia.
Okay, how about any projects, any good projects in Indonesia that have been using cleaner energy sources that you can share with us?
I think a couple of kind of most kind of forward ways. A project from my side would be kind of I think the floating power plants in a couple of locations, because I think that kind of answers the issue when we're talking about solar. It's always kind of the cost of the land, kind of the land use itself. And I think by using kind of the floating mechanism here, I think a couple of companies and a couple of organizations are developing this. So basically, you put the solars on top of like a reservoir, so that you don't use land, you don't have to cut down forests, you don't kind of convert land use for that. And I think that kind of supplies clean energy into the grid. And I think there's a couple of wind projects as well as kind of being developed. I think I know one is Sidrap has been operating since I think a couple of years ago. And for the hydropower and geothermal, I think we have one of the biggest geothermals in the world in Sarula, as well as kind of an upcoming hydro project is going to be super important to the economy, say the Kayan project in Kalimantan.
So I think that gives a really hopeful note for our nation, even moving forward, that we have all these projects that is going on.
Yeah. Especially with the new capital city,
Yes,
Nusantara, right?
Indeed. With the ICANN as well, I'm sure that like even now, before a lot of people are moving there, these sustainable efforts are and alternative renewable sources are also being used there. And question right now for Reza is that talking about projects, what are some of the most interesting projects that you have been involved in terms of like wildlife conservation?
Toward for the net zero economy, it's in
Indeed.
line. How about you, Abindra? Your thoughts on this matter, like how we can conserve more and what we can do.
Yes, like what is the role in particular, as we talked about, not only from actors such as government actors, but also for the public, the greater public, and the local people in Indonesia.
Yeah, I think it's the same like what Matresa said. I think it comes down to like our personal choice. I mean, as simple as what he said, like liking the post, but in energy terms, I think just using lower, more efficient household products, lower energy to kind of do your daily things. Take the public transport. I think that's one of the biggest the ways you can kind of contribute, right? And kind of shut down lights, shut down your air conditioner when you're not using it, and kind of be as efficient as possible. I think it all starts from there. And if you tell yourself, or like if you tell others that this is really minuscule, it doesn't kind of impact the greater good. I mean, if we kind of put all of our efforts, like all those efforts, into like one cumulative calculation, it does matter. So basically, kind of doing yourself like being more efficient. I think that's one thing that you could do from like a personal and individual standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, to conclude, please share with us your hope, especially because this is Indonesian Independence Day. Can Indonesia be independent by conserving and be net zero in economy?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, like with the theme of independence, like my biggest hope is we can be independent from fossil fuel use, right? I think like, investing in renewables, doing things more efficiently, investing in more efficient technology, and it all culminates in kind of decoupling that economic growth from emissions, right? Because I think, as I think the previous session also said, like there's the just part in energy transition. I think the global north, such as developed countries, have pushed that okay, everyone needs to decarbonize, everyone needs to kind of shift from fossil fuels. But I think you need to do it in a just manner. So I think like seeing how to kind of do that whilst also kind of not sacrificing the growth of the economy as well as kind of the world for our future generations, right? So basically doing it in a just manner is kind of something that I would hope Indonesia can do. And I think we are, as you know, we are in the forefront of this kind of energy transition. We have one of the biggest growing economies. We have one of the biggest growing population. And in terms of basically what Master has said, our natural resources, our natural capital is really key in terms of like becoming a global net zero because of our carbon sinks in mangroves, in forests, and in biodiversity. So basically, I think my hope is Indonesia becomes like this global leader in kind of transitioning to like a net zero economy.
Well, yeah, we hope so too.
Yes, we do, and that's really great. I love that what you said about that. We already are in a strategic positioning as a country with the resources that we have, and hopefully in the future it will continue to be better. And now, Reza, what about you? What are some closing remarks that you want to say as well? Now, I would like to go to the Zoom to Abindra. And ask, in particular, when talking about net zero economy, what are some trends that you've seen in shifting now more towards renewable energy sources?
It's been going on. I think a couple of countries, like developing countries, and has kind of increased the renewable penetration in their power systems, as well as kind of the uptake of new technologies such as the battery EV vehicles, as well as kind of the use of kind of heat pumps in industry. So basically, those trends are kind of going forward, and I think investments in the supply chain from the upstream to the downstream for these kind of low carbon technologies that's also kind of been happening, as well as kind of in Indonesia with kind of the nickel smelters, with the battery investments, with the solar power manufacturing investments. So I think yeah, it's been a positive trend from that side at least, and from the fossil fuel side, I think a couple of countries have kind of taken a very firm step in phasing out from fossil fuel. And I think one of those trends that we've kind of seen is kind of the Indonesian government already kind of trying to make a roadmap for coal phase and coal retirement up until 2050. So a positive trend at least, but again, we need to be kind of be more ambitious and kind of push the decision makers to kind of
Yes.
go to net zero even quicker.
Well, yes. Hopefully, we can move our like before and to the net zero economy in any time soon.
Our wonderful guests on the show want to say thank you so much, especially for Reza Maulana, wildlife conservationist, for joining us in
My
the
pleasure.
TVI World Studio, and also for Abindra Pradika Somali, a net zero economy expert, for joining us on Zoom as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been true pleasure talking with you and learning from your expertise. Thank you.
Yeah.